And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Looking at tonight's weather again, rain and showers across southern Alaska, drier in the central interior, back to more moisture on out to the Arctic coast. High pressure here over the central eastern Bering Sea in advance in the next system, bringing some wind and rain into the western Aleutians, and not quite as wet over the southeast coast. This system moves northeastward tomorrow, and late in the day and tomorrow evening starts to really pick up the wind and rain for the North Gulf Coast and along the coast of the Panhandle. Showers over much of interior Alaska with mostly cloudy skies. And this front pushing wind and rain into the central Aleutians. That makes a pretty good jog to the east here on Thursday, as you can see, right up into the southwest coast. And a lot of rain and showers following in behind over the eastern Bering and the Aleutians. Otherwise, rain and showers over much of interior Alaska, south of the Brooks Range. And this front brings a good shot of rain into the Panhandle and the North Gulf Coast into the Prince William Sound area during the day Thursday. The new low down here, keeping some heavier rain in over the southern southeast coast. Coastal water forecast, small craft advisories, central and south coast here for south winds 25 knots. And east to southeast, 25 to 30 knot winds for the north coast. Lighter winds over the inside waters, all about southerly at 15 knots with 3-foot seas. And then gale warnings, central and south coast here. South, 35 knots for Thursday. Seas up to 16 feet. Small craft advisories and gale force winds up to the north here, anywhere from 25 to 30 knots out of the south-southeast to east at 30 to 35 knots up on the north coast. South 25, Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, south 25 for Stevens Passage, and southeast 30 knots for Clarence Strait. Prince William Sound, tomorrow, east winds 20 knots, and east-southeast 25 to 30 knot winds for the eastern North Gulf Coast, otherwise variable 20 knots on the west side there. Barren Islands, northeast winds 20 knots, northeast 15 there for southern Cook Inlet, or all of Cook Inlet, and Kamishak Bay with seas 3 to 5 feet. For the day on Thursday, north winds 15 knots, northern Cook Inlet, south of the Foreland Zone becoming northwest at 20 knots, west 20 knots for Kamishak Bay, picking up to 30 knots when those westerlies get out to the Barren Islands, and northwest 25 for the western North Gulf Coast. East winds, east-southeast winds 30 to 35 knots, eastern North Gulf Coast, and Prince William Sound, east winds 25 knots with seas up to 6 feet. Kodiak Island, northeast winds 15 to 20 knots, northwest 20 knot winds for the Alaska Peninsula, southwest 20 for Bristol Bay. And for Thursday, small craft advisories here, the Alaska Peninsula, south to southwest winds 25 knots, small crafts also for Bristol Bay, southwest at 20 knots, and west winds 20 to 25 knots for Kodiak Island. Eastern Aleutians, northwest winds 15 to 20 knots with seas 4 to 6 feet. Give or take. Southwest 20 knots, central Aleutians, small craft advisories from Amchitka Island out to Shimia. Southwest winds 25 to 30 knots. And about the same on Thursday out that way. West-southwest winds 20 to 30 knots. Western Aleutians, Adak and Atka, west 25 to 30 knots there. Small craft advisories for southwest winds at 25 for the Fox Islands. And for the Kuskokwim Delta Coast, northwest winds tomorrow at 20 knots. Lighter here over the northern Bering Sea, St. Lawrence Island, 10-knot winds there out of the west and southwest, northwest 15 for the Pribilofs. And then on Thursday, small craft advisories for St. Paul and St. George Islands, southwest 25, seas up to 7 feet. 30-knot southerly winds here for the Kuskokwim Delta Coast, but seas only up to about 5 or 6 feet. West 20 knots for St. Matthew Island, southwest 15 for the Yukon Delta Coast, Norton Sound, St. Lawrence Island, southeast winds 15 knots. And for the Chukchi Sea tomorrow, south winds 10 to 15 knots, about the same for the western Arctic coast. Central coast, west at 15. And then the east side there, west winds 20 to 25 knots with 4 to 6 foot seas. And then for Thursday, those winds switch direction, but only at about 10 to 15 knots out of the east there. And then the central and western Arctic coast, southeast winds at 10 knots with 2 to 3 foot seas. And the Chukchi Sea, east to southeast winds at 10 to 15 knots.